we offer over at heartofamerica.net. And this has been an offshoot of, a program that we did some years ago that was done locally, and we wanted to take it on the road. And we found that to be a little bit on the, improbable side. And so we decided to take it on the internet and do everything in our power to help keep folks safe in whatever situation they might be in. Today we're talking with a fellow by the name of Jason Miller. He is with an organization called Safety Book, and we're going to be talking about ways to keep our young people safe at school. A little bit later on, we'll be talking cyber security with the folks over at Liberty One Tech as the ways to keep our young people and probably their parents as well safe online. There are so many things to discuss, so many things in the news, even right here in Alabama, some national news stories that have been made as it relates to personal safety and security. But, I think one of the things that really concerns us all each and every day is when the kids leave, whether or not you drop them off at the front door, they jump on the bus, whatever the case may be, that you are putting their safety and their security. How well that worked out in Parkland. And I certainly don't want to create an illusion that law enforcement is not able to do what law enforcement is able to do. However, and as much as I hate to think of it this way, I think we've gotten to the point where we have to think about turning our attention towards the students themselves and teaching them ways where they can protect themselves, where they can take responsibility for protecting others in their classrooms, because it is quite obvious that one or two resource officers are simply not going to be appropriate. And I don't know how I feel. And we go back and forth about this all the time, and we can go back and forth about it on a regular edition of the Michael Hart Show, because this is a show where we typically do not take telephone calls simply because of the amount of information that we want to share with you. So if, in fact, and I don't know that we've really discussed this that much in this national narrative, if, in fact, it's a matter of teaching the kids how to defend themselves, is that the best way to proceed? Because we have seen time and time and time again where the security measures that have been in place are simply not adequate. To give some thoughts on this, we are joined by Jason Miller. He is with Safety Book, and he's going to come talk to us a bit about exactly what the problem is in terms of the current condition of security and perhaps what these young folks can do to defend themselves in the time of these absolutely horrific and tragic events. Good morning, Jason. How are you? Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, you sound great, Michael. Thank you very much, and thanks for having me.
Well, absolutely. I found you, believe it or not, on Twitter, which seems to be like where I find a good number of people these days. And, there's been so much discussion. And let me just kind of give you some backstory about this very quickly. The Situational Security Program idea was birthed about 4 or 5 years ago in Birmingham, Alabama, where my terrestrial radio program was housed. And on one Saturday morning, we were talking about some of the school shootings and of course, what was going on in terms of personal security and carjackings and things of that nature. We got this bright idea to start just to go out, into the community and see if we could get a few folks in a room. We'd invite the cops and the FBI to come talk. Jason, we put over 4,000 people in a church one Saturday morning talking about just this stuff. And it seemed so overwhelmingly concerning to these people. So we wanted to reproduce that, and that's what this particular program is about. That's why the audio here, we're live now, but we'll archive it a little bit later on at SitSec.info. But you have a product, and you're with an organization called Safety Book. And in the heels of Parkland, there's been so many discussions, and it's happened in the past, about arming teachers, arming resource officers. Is that a workable solution, or should we really turn our attention towards teaching our young people how to remain safe?
Well, you highlight a lot of interesting points about this issue. Number one, it's complicated, and it's such a complicated issue. There's not a panacea. There's not a silver bullet. And so you just have to, at least from my perspective, go do your best to sort through the real data. Both overall, like actual hard numbers, and then get down granular into pieces of these events and how they unfolded to get a real picture. I come from a background in blast. I was in that business for 7 years, worked around a bunch of engineers, and it's a very data-driven niche industry, for military and industrial security. And so I intentionally took that approach to try and do my best anyway to try and depoliticize this issue in my approach. So that was number one. The first thing I discovered, which I kind of knew but didn't know the extent, is it's difficult to get good data on this stuff. Number one, the biggest issue is that folks will monkey with the definition of mass shooting or active shooting. And some of it is, hey, we just have a different definition. And some of it, I think, is indicative of bias. So, for example, I'll give you two examples. The Gun Violence Archive, and they're similar to the Everytown group. They have a very broad definition of mass shooting or active shooting, and they just call it gun violence. Big, broad definition. Whereas what I would call a more middle of the road definition of mass shooting is the FBI, whereas they define it as 4 people or more are shot in one incident in a public space. So there's a lot of room for, bias or just a different approach in the way you look at this problem. So it's complex. So that was where I started, is how can I depoliticize this as much as I can and make it a reasonable, rational solution to any parent or any person, no matter what their political perspective is.
Well, you're right. It's absolutely a flashpoint, politically speaking. And that's, it is funny because from somebody in the media, and not only have I done things online, but, I was on a terrestrial signal for 10 years as well. And I've interviewed pretty much everybody in this country on this particular, issue, from the NRA to the Gun Owners of America, Jan Morgan, you pick them. If they're a gun person, I've interviewed them. And, it's so interesting because it is such a politically charged issue, whereas when you're talking about the safety of these children, then it certainly needs to be depoliticized, because it doesn't really matter, from my perspective, Jason, what your politics are or what the impetus might be. We are living in an age where the violence in these schools, whether it's perpetrated by mentally ill students or whatever the case may be, I don't know that the solution to that resides on the gun right debate side of things. These events, although they are obviously relatively rare, they don't seem rare lately, they are going to occur. So what is the solution? Is it a matter of doubling down on the technology in the school? Is it more resource officers? Or, as I have set it up earlier today, do we need as parents to take more responsibility for teaching our children how to survive these events?
Well, I'll hark back to what I started with, which is it's an all of the above. It's as much as you can, possibly, see your way clear to implement. So it's you've got sort of 3 levels to this. The way I look at it, you've got the preventive approach, you've got the mitigating or the hardening approach, which is there in the moment. And then you've got your, rebuilding or restoration or, the cleanup is what a lot of law enforcement calls it. And I intentionally focused on that middle section. It's, from, in engineering speak, from T0, when that first shot is fired or when they first realize there's a problem, you've got between 2 and 20 minutes where the intended victims that are there on site will be their own first responders. And that's a reality. Every police officer, paramedic, et cetera, will tell you that. Law enforcement folks can't be everywhere when we wouldn't want them to be. So there is a time frame to where there's no one else available except the people there on the spot. Having an armed response statistically across the board works. Mike Tyson put it pretty effectively when he said everyone's got a plan till they get punched in the face. That speaks to how plans change once they meet resistance. But that's not that's not necessarily an option in certain places, either because of legal or ideological reasons, and especially in schools. Those kids don't have the option of armed response. their school, their ISD, they may or may not have put something like that in place. But I wanted something, an option that would provide a measure of physical security that would either make a good public policy decision or a good individual decision, and it could be either one. So I intentionally focus on the physical security piece of this horrific puzzle because it's the easiest one to depoliticize because, people will throw out truisms or, personal attacks on you, but at the end of the day, a good physical security product will stop the round or stop the threat regardless of how anybody votes. The politicization of this issue absolutely drives me crazy because there's two exceptions that I'm aware of, Gabby Giffords being one, Steve Scalise being two, that were politically motivated. Beyond that, those are the exceptions that prove the rule. Beyond that, these are, crazy and or evil people looking to go cause death and mayhem, and they don't care how you voted. They're there to inflict pain and death, and only something physical will do the job.
Well, I absolutely love the phraseology, your own first responder. I think that applies to, I really kind of think almost to a degree that paraphrases this entire program. And I don't mean this episode. I mean, the entire view or the vision of the Situational Security Show, because we want people to learn how to be their own first responder. And you're absolutely right that you've only got a matter of moments, and some of these events go down so unbelievably quickly that, we don't have time for an armed response. Certainly don't have time to wait for the police to get there, unless we're in a hostage situation that they were forewarned of. So let's assume for one moment the kids go off to school and, God forbid, heaven forbid, one of these events occurs. It unfolds. Now, you have created a product called Safety Book, and I like the theory behind it. I like the concept behind it. But why don't you tell us a little bit more? And not to sound like I'm being promotional for the product, but I think the fact that we've got to teach these kids what to do in these situations. I mean, I understand the idea of, run away if you can, hide if you can, but there might come that point in time where those options have been exhausted. You talk about, if you can't run, you can't hide, then find some way to defend yourself, find some kind of a weapon. And as you point out, all because you find a weapon in the moment doesn't mean you're going to be effective. A lot of people train, as you were referring to Tyson a moment ago, and then the event occurs, and they weren't trained well enough. And they realize that when reality hits, your response might not be copacetic to your training. So with that said,
that's right.
You've created this product, the Safety Book. Tell us about it.
Well, the training piece is absolutely right. That was one of the guiding principles in designing this product, and it looks pretty simple, but there's a lot that went into it. Number one is, and this is not unique, but I first heard it from Dr. Jeff Damelin, who was on Deadliest Warrior, has his own biomechanical engineering group called GTD Engineering. He said, under duress, you will sink to the level of your training. And I've always remembered that because it aligned real well with my background. But in this case, I wanted whatever I came up with to be instinctive, so that the training part would be absolutely minimal. If you've ever had somebody throw something or try and hit you in the face, the first thing you do is you raise your hands up. And so that's one of the elements of it. The other is I needed it to be complementary to whatever active shooter, mass shooter protocol that the school, the church, the synagogue, the company has in place. And so, whether you're Run, Hide, Fight or Alice or Alive, they've all got a hide or a lockdown phase. In that case, the Safety Book provides meaningful, vital area coverage, i.e. head and center mass. You get meaningful coverage, even full-size people. In a run or an evacuate situation, put it on the back and hightail it out, and you've got some meaningful coverage on the vitals on your back. So that was another one. And I would say the main one, and this is sort of my blast and ballistics background, is I wanted it to be practical enough that a small child could carry it realistically and use it, but also stop rifle rounds. And this is really what took this from, the cocktail napkin phase into reality is the Parkland shooting. You saw after that event, the bulletproof backpacks, quote unquote, start flying off the shelves. And those are good products. There's nothing wrong with them. But what killed me is that they will not stop rifle rounds. And we've got some videos on, showing you just what happens when you shoot one with a rifle. It's not pretty. And it's not a problem. Those weren't designed for that. But it speaks to how difficult it is to stop a rifle round because of the physics. If safety book, just to give you a number here, if safety book were only geared towards pistols and shotguns, it would weigh a pound. It would weigh like a notebook, and that's great. But I really wanted it to be able to stop, AR-15 rounds, AK-47 rounds, and that necessitated that it be about 4 times the mass. It was always about 4 pounds, about like a textbook, and it will reliably stop all of your common rifle rounds. We've tested it up to 300 Winchester Magnum, been multi-hit with AR and AK rounds. So it does the job if it's in the right place. And so, putting all those things together in a friendly package. I've heard objections from public officials say, well, we don't want our schools to feel like prisons, and that makes sense. So I wanted something that could be, like I said, good public policy. It could be, say, here's what we're doing, this is a great thing, or a concerned parent could just slip it in their kid's clear backpack, which those are becoming more common, and have some peace of mind that they did everything they reasonably could, because none of us are guaranteed tomorrow. I could get hit by a bus or have a heart attack tomorrow. I hate saying that out loud. But it's sometimes when your time is up, your time is up. But I didn't want to feel like if the unthinkable did happen in my life, I didn't want to feel like I didn't do everything I could have, and I wanted to be able to offer that to other folks too.
Well, I love the training aspect of it, and I've referenced this on this program several times. A couple friends of mine, one unfortunately is deceased, wrote a book called Professionalism Under Stress, and one of them was a psychologist, and the other one is a decorated Vietnam veteran. And the whole context of the book is that in times of trouble or times of, security issues, in every aspect of our life, not just a bodily threat, that we need to be trained to respond intuitively to events and not have to think our way through them when seconds matter. And that was one of the things that attracted me to your ideas and what you're doing, because in a lot, even if you're heavily armed, you have to go through the machinations of pulling the weapon, aiming the weapon, pulling the trigger, as opposed to having something that is an almost automatic and yet passive response, at least potentially. I understand that this product, this book that you created, can be taken out of the backpack and used as a shield instead of just, on somebody's back, which may or may not be effective. And it's got options that the traditional bulletproof backpacks do not have. And so, and I tell you something else that I really liked about it, and this is kind of harsh, Jason, but I think one of the problems that a lot of parents have is that they don't want little Sally and Johnny to know about the threat necessarily. They don't want to scare them. They don't want to send them off in this environment that the teachers had expressed to you that concerns them. But they need to know, don't they? They need to be aware that that they are their own first responder. Wouldn't that be part of the training? I would certainly think it would be.
Yeah, for sure. And we're working with a lot of tactical security training groups here in the Houston area, which is where we're located, for just those kinds of things, because the physical part of it will look really similar. The training part will look really similar, whether it's a school or a church or an office. The difference is with a kid, you soften the language, right? And you just tell them, well, listen, if the siren goes off or when the drill starts, you just do this, and when teacher says this, you do this. Put it between you and the noise, and then follow your teacher's instructions. And so it's something that from our feedback so far, it not actually increasing fear, it actually decreases fear, because what we found in a lot of areas of our lives is that being prepared rather than making you paranoid actually reduces the fear. I mean, it's the same way you buy insurance because, something bad could happen. It's the same way you save money because you're afraid of, not being able to pay the bills. You buy fire extinguishers and sprinkler systems, just in case. This, unfortunately, is something that we're going to be facing regardless of whose numbers you're looking at. It's not going away. And so, to have a plan for it for a lot of reasons we think is a good idea.
Well, again, I couldn't agree more because, we have gotten into the debate over, I don't even know how many years about, without politicizing it, about the, ownership of weapons and guns in the school, guns in the cockpit, whatever the case may be. I don't know. You put a gun in the hand of somebody that is reluctant to carry that gun or certainly reluctant to train with that gun, that person becomes more of a threat, more of a danger than if they were completely unarmed. And looking at, for example, Parkland, you saw, I don't know if it was motivated by fear or laziness or terror or situational awareness or what, but then you have the resource officers not responding or standing down and forcing the children, in this case, to be their own first responder. And again, I double down on how much I really, really like that because I think it's time that we do begin to shift the responsibility away from the quote-unquote system to the individual, and we start to harden these targets a little bit more, and maybe over time that will begin to diminish these behaviors in terms of these shooters. So with that said, just so we're clear about this, since we're talking about schools, it's called Safety Book. Does it resemble a textbook?
Absolutely. It walks and talks like a book, except it's a really short read, Michael. But it's 10 by 13 inches on the front, and it's about 3/4 of an inch thick. It's very much like a textbook or a coffee table book. My teenage daughter says she has textbooks that are heavier, and she carries one every day. My 9-year-old third grade daughter carries one every day. And I'll tell you this: the testament to me was I have carried it genuinely everywhere. Church, work, out to eat, school, everywhere. No one has ever given it a second look and asked me, "Hey, what's that?" So I knew that I was, at least sort of hitting that minimum goal of having it be discreet. I've genuinely never been asked what it was, and so that was a litmus test for me.
Well, another thing that I like about it is, like you said, it's removable from this pack as well. Now, if somebody was interested in getting it, I believe your website is safety.book.com. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah, there's a dash in the middle, safety-book.com. Yes, sir.
Does it require or is there available any training with this as well? Because obviously, you just don't want to stick a book in somebody's backpack or carrying this thing around, just conspicuously. So I would imagine that there would have to be some kind of instruction to it, necessarily, situational awareness tips perhaps.
Yeah, and that was one of the other requirements is instinctive, easy to use. And if you look at the main video on the homepage, and we have several if you scroll down, but the main video is how to use Safety Book. And you'll see, two girls of different ages using it. And to give you an idea, the older girl took about 30 seconds of training, and then we did the shoot. The younger girl took, maybe 90 seconds, and most of that was just tweaking the form so that you get the best coverage and the best effectiveness using it. So the actual how to use it's really simple. I mean, it genuinely, it was 60 seconds of training, and it integrates perfectly with any protocol. And that was by design, so I wanted them to have that option and have it, align with whatever the plan was at their school or church or whatever. Very, very simple, very instinctive. Again, if you've ever had someone or something come at your face and you instinctively raised your hands, then you have the ability to use Safety Book effectively.
Are you seeing people use it in places other than just the schools, which I believe it was designed for?
We're starting to see some interest from churches and synagogues, and for the Pittsburgh shooting that tragic event, that is one that was horrific on a lot of levels. From an objective standpoint, it took 20 minutes for the police to get in there and respond. So that's pretty much your worst case scenario. That and the Thousand Oaks shooting. But yeah, that's the horrific part, because anybody that's ever fought, even on an amateur level, and fought 2-minute rounds knows how long 2 minutes can seem like. And 2 minutes is your best case scenario for a response time. So that 2 to 4 time frame, 20 minutes, you've got people that have just, given up or trying to sink into the shadows. It's just a horrific thought. So yeah, we're seeing more interest from folks that are exactly who we're looking for. They have a proactive mindset, because and then want to do something beforehand. Because if you wait until the time of, it's too late.
Well, it's interesting that you point to the timeline. And, those of us that are in particularly talk radio, we kind of have this long-standing kind of a, joke or conversation amongst ourselves about what you can do with a minute when you're in the media, because, we'll take these breaks that are 3 and 4 minutes long. I used to, joke I could run down the hall, go to the bathroom, get a cup of coffee, balance my checkbook, run out to my car, change the tires, and come back in. Because when you're used to working in minute tight compartments, you realize how unbelievably long a minute can be. And it's interesting that you bring that up, because I think more people need to realize that these are events that can unfold in a matter of seconds, and all of a sudden you've got a mass casualty situation. Jason, good stuff. I really do appreciate it. I love the first responder idea as well. I think people need to learn how to be first responders in almost every single situation. So with that said, if people want to learn, I know there's some YouTube videos up there, the training videos, and they can also find out more about the safety book itself. Give me all the appropriate address information.
Well, probably the center point of all that is the website, and it's safety-book.com. And so we've got our testing videos, we've got our third-party test reports, so that people can see the results from someone else doing the tests. We've got the training videos. We have links to all of our social media, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, even LinkedIn. So there's a little bit about me, and I don't like to make it about me because it's really not, but just so that people have some idea of, well, how do I know it works? Well, there's a whole bunch of data, third-party data on there, so that they can see that it works, see why it matters, and then make their own decision. And that's what we're really hoping for. We genuinely hope that we can really roll these things out to, especially to kids, but certainly houses of worship too, where they don't have the option of an armed response. Roll these out. Law of large numbers means it will save some lives. When I left the blast business, I decided that I just wasn't done trying to save some lives, and that's really what motivates this whole thing.
Well, again, I think, just the idea, just the awareness of the problem, and the fact that even if you don't want to carry a gun or you can't carry a gun, that you do have other options, because you're absolutely right. This is not going anywhere anytime in terms of the shooter. The shooter events are not going anywhere anytime soon, and we've got to teach people personal responsibility in every aspect of their lives, and certainly their personal security would be at the top of that list. Jason, thank you so much for popping by. Definitely want to get you back on with us again very, very soon.
Well, I'd be glad to do it, and I really appreciate you having me, Michael.
Absolutely. Thank you so very much.
Thank you.
All right, guys, we're going to take a real quick break. We're going to come back on the other side, and we're going to be joined by our good buddy, Talia Williams. We're going to talk about not just keeping your kids safe at school or at the mall for that matter, but also talking about ways to keep them safe while they are online. Maybe a few lessons that moms and dads can learn as well. You're listening to the Situational Security Show on the Heart of America Talk Radio Network. Stick around. We're coming right back.
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Breaking news, a school shooting with reports of multiple fatalities.
He had ran up to me and yelled at me to give me my purse.
A warning for online shoppers tonight. A new scam that could steal your personal information in just a matter of seconds.
Breaking news, a deadly carjacking in Woodland Hills.
Tonight, police in Lancaster, Texas have identified a possible suspect who investigators say pointed a gun at a passing car.
Hey, welcome in. You're listening to the Situational Security Program, the Friday edition right here on the Heart of America Talk Radio Network. Certainly do hope that we learned a few things about keeping our kids safe at school, forcing them or teaching them or training them to be their own first responder. I think that actually applies to pretty much everybody out there. Whether we're talking about gun safety or being in your car or being at the mall or being out in the woods camping, first aid and CPR and so many other things, which is what we're going to be discussing on this particular broadcast every single Friday. It is something that's very near and dear to my heart. Last week we talked about how to not become a victim in a crossfire situation. There's going to be other things we're going to be discussing, but probably something that is, because, the schools, if you don't have children or you're not a child yourself or a teacher, these are things that affects this kind of, I won't say, finite, but, it's kind of a finite body of people, but something that affects pretty much all of us, even if you don't like the use of technology. Technology definitely likes you because your bank uses it, your GPS uses it. Everything that we do. You can't move a train in America without the use of technology. It is absolutely, positively everywhere. It's not only here to stay, but it's growing every single day. I personally do my banking on my phone. I can control my investments on my phone. I can do this program through my phone. Everything that we do has a technological component, and everything we do is out there for somebody to weasel or hack their way into it. And as you hear even in the promos, and we're hearing all the time about online scams, I have personally had 3 or 4 people try to scam me up here just in the last few months as well. I'm constantly getting these emails about somebody's trying to send me a document. I need to download this file so I can read the important document. Don't even know if it's coming from Nigeria or not. I don't open that stuff. I don't open attachments. But in this country today, we seem a little bit too willing, to my taste, to reveal our personal information voluntarily. But then there are those that are quite astute at doing so, well, kind of cloak and dagger and behind the scenes. And to help us kind of detail this out a little bit, learn a little bit more about ways we can protect ourselves, it's our very own tech guy, Tolly Williams with Liberty One Tech. How are you, Tolly?
Good morning, Michael. I should say up front, I don't have any kids either. I am a licensed substitute teacher. I've been around kids a whole lot. I've been a substitute teacher since 2001, grew up in the school system. I've worked with kids. I've done a statewide computer competition that hosted high school and middle school children where we had a competition. It was real fun. But my credentials here don't involve me having kids. So feel free to jump in as a parent yourself with thoughts on that. I am a tech expert. I have talked to a lot of people. I feel like I can do it. And in fact, in all the years I've done and looked at cybersecurity, I've really got it pretty boiled down, very simple. And in fact, we don't need 30 minutes for this, so I hope you weren't planning on 30 minutes or however long. The simple solution is don't give your kids a phone and never have internet, and you're done. That's it. That's all you got to do. If you want to keep your kids safe,
all right, so we're done.
Don't give them a phone and turn off the internet. We're done.
Excellent. All right, so how do we keep moms and dads safe? Because you know something, Talia, and I think this is so unbelievably ridiculous, is that, I was reading some story a few weeks ago about how the most popular password on the internet is password. And people will use it over and over and over again. Now, what's interesting also about that is in recent applications that I've had to use, whether you start a new Google or a Gmail account, or maybe you're putting up some kind of a program like we did with the Patreon account for folks that want to support what we're doing here at Heart in America. It doesn't just let you use these passive blasé passwords any longer. Now you've got to have upper lowercase and one numeral and a character or whatever the case may be. So even the people that are using technological products or selling technological products are understanding the threat and are almost forcing people to up their own security, kind of going back to what Jason was talking about a few moments ago, and becoming your own first responder, because it seems like people don't understand the threat out there. And one of the things that I wanted to do with you today, because you have been instrumental in helping us put together the websites and all the other things that we're doing, and I'll be honest with you, I am amazed at what you've been able to do and the insights from a technological perspective. So I'm going to look at you not just as a cyber expert, but perhaps a hacking expert. How exposed are we to people that have your level of understanding and information as it relates to the Internet?
That's very flattering, Michael. I really and genuinely appreciate you calling me a hacker. I love that, actually. And in fact, that's true, though. I appreciate the compliments. You are exposed. Your children are exposed, and that is one of the four types of case scenarios I want to address today. Is not just what you can do as a parent for your kids in particular, but like adults, children also need to protect their own privacy. I'm going to frame the conversation in the context of four different kind of scenarios. And the last one I want to cover touches on exactly what you're talking about, which is don't be the hacked kid. I know someone who I guess I'll do it first. I'll just kind of go into it first since we're talking about it. I know someone who is not a kid, but he's a young adult. And there was some malfeasance going on in the workplace, and there was some relationship issues, and we don't know who did it. He doesn't know who did it, but his online account was hacked, his email was hacked, and his private messages, which included private pictures, were sent out to all of his coworkers and to his family. And I don't need to, even go into the details of how private the pictures were, but you can use your imagination. It was very embarrassing for him, and very what happened to him was illegal, by the way. And we'll get into that as well. So when you keep your kids safe online, you don't have to become a cybersecurity expert. You don't have to know everything in and out. But do be aware of that, just like you hear adults talk about their bank accounts being hacked or their identity theft occurring, it's not just adults who could be targeted for hacking or having things broken into. Children also have incredible amounts of private and personal data stored, what we call in the cloud, online. So if anyone gets access to it, it's out there for everyone. You might have heard about there was I'm kind of scared to say this word, but I think it's okay. It's called the fappening. I'm not going to describe the origins of that term, but the fappening was a massive hack online of countless celebrity and non-celebrity accounts that exposed all their photos stored in their online backup, their iCloud backup or their Google Photos backup, and it got uploaded in bulk. And so the message from this is this, twofold. One, teach your kids and teach yourself that nothing you do digitally is ever for sure going to disappear. We live in a world today where you have an indelible record. You have an indelible mark on your future self. Whatever you take a picture of, whatever you write online, whatever you share, whatever link you put a post up to, could possibly come back to haunt you for the entirety of your life. I hope it doesn't, and it probably won't, especially if you know how to handle it in the follow-up. But some of these kids and celebrities who had their information exposed in this massive online leak of private data, their lives could potentially forever be altered by that. And it was because they did not have good online security. They didn't have a good password, or what we call two-factor. So using a good password is important, but also just as important as having a good password is two-factor authentication. Two factors mean one, something you know, which is your password, but the second factor is something you have, like your phone. So you have to have a second factor, your phone in hand, in order to be able to log into your account. It takes you a 6-digit code, and that lets you into your account. Many online services enforce this today, but not everywhere uses it, and not everyone turns it on. But you should. It's very important to keep your account safe, to keep you safe, to keep your kids safe. Another thing to talk about, though, is, Michael, the good kid, the ones the parents trust. You know, they give them a phone. They don't have to do little monitoring. That's good. So online safety starts with ordinary parenting. Simply put, and that, unfortunately today, I'm not so sure that ordinary parenting is actually that ordinary. I think it's extraordinary today. Do you agree, Michael? Like, we're living in a day and time where my generation is really screwed up and not doing such a good job with the kids.
Well, you know, I do, because I don't think a lot of the parents today, and I brought this up before, Tolly, is that, you know, there comes a point in time where you stop raising your children, and you start raising kids, and then you start counseling adults as a parent. And today's generation of parents, I don't think they understand the threat, because their parents didn't understand what the threat would become. And so there's no real way, you know, back in the day we taught our kids, you know, to be honest and to share, and, you know, maybe how to grow a garden or shoot a gun or drive a truck. What we're learning today is so much different. And I think today's crop of parents are woefully ill-prepared, not because they're ignorant, but because they don't understand this new dynamic of technology. You know, for example, you know, how many young people out there have an Instagram account? You know, Instagram's becoming, you know, they've left Facebook because their parents began hanging out there. So all of a sudden now they're Instagramming everything. Well, every picture you put out on Instagram becomes the property of Instagram. And I think a lot of young people don't really understand that happens, you know, in multiple different places that they might be participating in online. So your point is valid in that you've got parents that don't even understand the threat and are unable to help their kids navigate it as well. And I find that to be very concerning.
I like what you just said, mainly because it takes the burden off of my generation and puts it back on yours and say, you're the ones that messed up because you raised us and now we're raising them. And it's just all coming back to bite you now. But no, you're absolutely right. So good online safety for your children starts with just basic good parenting. And for instance, with good parenting, you would establish expectations for their behavior. I don't like to say the word rules. I do have an education background, and you know, they always say don't put up no's, put up yeses. Don't say don't do this, don't do this. I always say put up yeses. I don't go that far with things. I don't think I don't avoid the no word. I think that's important, but I do like to say, you know, boundaries, expectations. Those are good words. Establish expectations for their behavior. Well, you also establish expectations for their online activities. It is important and essential to sit down with your child and say, now, just like you would talk to them before going out to their first basketball game when they're 16 years old or something like that, you would establish expectations for what they're going to do online. It's okay for you to go to this website. You shouldn't go to this website. Talking to people should be this. You shouldn't do that. And honestly, you might think that here's where I say things like don't talk to strangers, don't give out personal information, don't give out your phone number, don't go meet people in strange places. Honestly, that information's out there. It's been out there. The kids know it. Your parents know it. That's not new. No one needs to know that, or they need to know that, but no one doesn't know that. That's the grounds of the basics. I want to get into more of like, you know their friends in person. Well, get to know their online friends. At some point in time as a parent, you should have a conversation with your kid. Hey, let's go through your friends list. Let me see who all your friends are online. Tell me about your friends. Who are these people? Because you don't know them. They have 1,000 Twitter followers. They have 1,000 Facebook friends. Worse, you might be raising an Instagram butt model influencer and not even know it, and they have 1 million people watching everything they post, and you don't even know it's happening. You know,
no, you're exactly
so you
right.
You need to know who your child's online friends are, just like you would know their friends in person. You would ask them, you know, if they're going to go hang out, like a 16-year-old going to their first basketball game by themselves. You know where they hang out after the basketball game. Well, know where they hang out online. Know where they go online. I'll come back to that in just a second. Just like you praise good behavior and punish and create negative behavior in real life, Same thing goes online. You know, if your kids are doing something cool online, if they're making YouTube videos and being creative and inspiring others with creativity, and you may look at the video and go, well, that's a stupid video. No one wants to watch you put on makeup. Who cares about how you do makeup? Let me tell you, that's creative and it's inspiring, and that's the thing that kids like to do is they call themselves creators, and we're raising a very empowered generation that has a lot of technology to be creative. You know, look at any Apple commercial. Creativity is a wonderful gift. And so praise that good behavior, but punish and correct negative behavior. So let's go back to the daughter making her, how to do makeup video, right? Well, if she's not wearing a good enough covering of clothing, if she's not fully covered, or if your son is being reckless with his, skating video to the point he's going to cause injury to himself, say, you know what, that's not such a great idea. Let me correct this and help you out here. Don't make it a big deal. Don't get too, down on them, but just lightly punish and lightly correct negative behavior. Or if it's very negative behavior, don't lightly do it hard. Where they hang out online, what you need to watch out for. Everywhere has private messages. Everywhere, every online service, almost without exception, to the point that I can't think of the exception right now if there is one, allows someone else to talk to you directly and privately without it being seen. That removes accountability for the conversation. It loosens lips. It's like the alcohol of the online conversation. So what might not be appropriate to be said in public might get said in private. So always be aware of private messages. If you have a good kid that you trust and you know their personality, you probably don't have to spy on them. But if you have a struggling kid who you know is acting irresponsibly in person, there's a good chance they're acting irresponsibly online, and you might have to sneak in and spy just a little bit to see these private messages, because without a little bit of spying, there's absolutely no way you can truly know what they're doing online. Unfortunately, the technology and tools are such that unless you borrow their phone or pick it up in the middle of the night while they're asleep and check some things out, you may never know everything going on. So I don't encourage it as like an everyday practice or something you're open about, because it would remove that barrier of trust and might turn into more issues. But if you know your child is prone to acting irresponsibly in person, they're probably prone to acting irresponsibly online, and you might have to do a little spying. Watch out for these things in particular. On Facebook, there can be secret groups. There are secret groups that oftentimes bully children, that talk about different topics and things that are very private and personal. And unless you log into their Facebook account or have access to their phone and their Facebook account, you can't see them. They're secret groups. They're completely hidden. YouTube is a great resource. There's like a million videos uploaded every second to YouTube. I forgot the exact number, but it's really insane. You can find a video on everything. I love it. You get a flat tire, you Google how to change a flat tire. Great. Video, train your kids right there. Unfortunately, there's also other videos that are violence. Incredibly violent stuff can be found on YouTube, and YouTube doesn't do a lot to police that. Violence is one of those categories they don't police very hard. But you can also, you may not know this, Michael, you can find how-to videos on YouTube to make your own drugs, to consume drugs, to buy the drug paraphernalia on Amazon. So look for the watch history on their YouTube accounts to see if they're actually looking into that stuff. Again, don't spy on everything, but if you think they're prone to misbehavior, that might be a good thing to do. Twitter can be a cesspool of online bullying and what we call subtweeting. Subtweeting is when someone says something about someone but doesn't use their name. So that person doesn't know they're being talked about, but they see it and they see a message that they think is about them, and it's really a devious form of bullying because they can't even say it to their face. It's like back talking or talking behind your back. So Twitter. Honestly, if I was raising a kid, I'd say get off Twitter. I'd just say Twitter is a cesspool of hatred and bigotry and all sorts of horrible type attitudes. I don't care about your follower count unless I really was just raising someone who I thought was really sharp on their game. I think Twitter is not a great place to be right now. Periscope, one of the platforms that we broadcast live on, is a great platform for online video, for live video. It's incredibly great for live news and broadcasting. Unfortunately, though, also, if you look deep into Periscope's popular videos, I'm not saying look deep in their cesspools here, Michael. I'm saying videos that are promoted by Periscope because they are popular. Lots of people are watching them. That's an alarm for me. The popular videos on Periscope, on the popular tab, if you scroll through them, you will almost certainly find some young person who is talking about or engaging in drug use. There is a culture of drug use on Periscope, and people will broadcast videos of them using their various drug paraphernalia and doing it. And I don't get why that's cool, but the kids think, some of the kids, not all of them, some of the kids think that's cool. Also on Periscope, watch out for creepy comments. Periscope's one of those platforms where you can be anonymous, unlike Facebook where you have to use your real name. And you know, that guy you're talking to may not, or that girl you're talking to may not be a girl, may be a guy. Maybe a guy twice the age they claim to be. So Periscope has a culture of drug use and of creepy comments. Will I let a kid on Periscope? Yeah, probably, but I'd be very careful and mindful of it. YouNow and Kick. Those are two other popular broadcasting platforms. YouNow is a broadcasting platform, and they use Kick to talk privately in response to it. If your kid is on YouNow, or if they use Kick as a private messenger, just delete the app and talk to your kids, because I've looked at those apps, and I will tell you, I can find almost nothing good about them. If you go to YouNow and look at the broadcast there, it is just a bunch of reckless, irresponsible, and almost nothing good comes out of that. Kick is kind of the same way. Kick is a private messenger, has some interesting features. You know, it's kind of a precursor to WhatsApp, which is a very popular messenger program. But because of the anonymous nature of it, it really is not a great place. Snapchat can be a plus and a minus. So if they're hanging out in Snapchat like most kids are, that can be a plus and a minus. The plus is this for Snapchat. It deletes everything they post. And believe me, in generations to come, we're going to want to, we call that ephemeral. It has ephemeral messaging. Things just go into the ether and never come back, hopefully. Now, everything can always be said. I'll get to that in just a second. But the benefit of Snapchat and kids using that is that they're still growing and learning. Even if they're not a troubled kid, even if they are the good kid, they're going to post things that they would not want to share later as an adult, you know. And so Snapchat's whole premise is it shows to your friends, and it goes away. And that probably is a good thing. You don't want to make a digital trail all the way back to your preteens that one day when you run for president, it's going to come out. You don't want that. But on the other side of Snapchat, because it is so private, kids might be tempted to post and share things more private than they should. And
not to interrupt you, Charlie, but I understand, you know, from you know, months past that one of the big problems that we were seeing a lot with Snapchat, for example, was kids that had a propensity towards, you know, advanced sexting, if you would, which, you know, sexting, of course, you know, is a sexual text. And on Snapchat, because of the disposable nature of that app, a lot of kids were engaging in this. And I fear that there's too many moms and dads out there that are thinking, well, not my kid. Johnny or Sally or Susie would never do that. But yet they succumb very oftentimes to peer pressure. And it's not just a matter of your kid doing it as much as it might be your kid on the receiving end of it.
That's very true. And so there's a twofold premise there. One is, because of its nature of disappearing, or in theory disappearing photos, does it encourage that behavior? Or two, does it help prevent that behavior from being as dangerous and harmful as it is? My premise, I tell parents, and I have talked to parents on this, is that, you know, if they weren't sexting on Snapchat, they might be sexting on iMessage or text message, where things don't disappear, and it is easier to come back and get these revenge photos. These, after the kids have broken up, the boyfriend wants to hold the ex-girlfriend, you know, hostage by saying, I'll put your nudes online, you know, stuff like that. So I don't know if Snapchat promotes dangerous and reckless behavior. It definitely serves to hide it, you know, and that, you know, it has pluses and minuses. On Snapchat, things to look for, it has a section called My Eyes Only. At some point in time, randomly, you should ask your kids, hey, what's in the My Eyes Only section of your Snapchat? If you didn't know it exists, basically My Eyes Only is a separate cloud storage, a separate section to store photos. It's not with your regular memories, it's your other memories. And it's even called My Eyes Only. Well, parents, your kids' eyes should also include your eyes. So look for the My Eyes Only and see what they have in there. And yes, you can, if once they get in college and stuff like that, there's not much you can do, but a common thing to see on college Snapchats are just, these drunken party snaps. People going to parties and getting drunk and posting things. So Snapchat has pluses and minuses. So if your kid is acting irresponsibly, can you do parental controls? Can you turn on some kind of control feature? To a limited degree, yes. On an iPhone, the parental controls are found under a section called Screen Time. If you have the latest update of the iPhone, they put parental controls under this big banner of Screen Time. Screen Time, as you might guess from the name, allows you to control how long an app can be on the screen and do things like, time limits and stuff like that. Another good section to use is Find My Friends and have a family account set up so that when you're in a family on the iPhone, you can see where everyone in your family is at any given time without having to text them or call them. You can just see where they are. And with parental controls, you can lock that feature turned on so it can't be turned off. And I do encourage parents to do that. I don't think it's too intrusive. I think it's reasonable intrusive. And you can just tell them it's a safety feature for their own safety. On Android, unfortunately, Android users don't have as good of an option built in. Google has an app you can download from the Google Play Store called Google Family Link that's kind of new this year. It's not as fully featured as the iPhone parental controls, but it does have some features. Trend Micro, who is the Russian, well, not the Russian, but they are foreign antivirus company, they also have some free parental controls in their app you can use. The parental controls can limit your access to apps, and they can always block purchases. That's an important thing, too, is to block kids from spending without your permission. And they can almost always track your kid's location. But let's be very clear. No amount of parental controls can block your kids from everything that's bad online. Yeah, I'll say the word. Porn sites notoriously get through filters. Any school or situation that says they filter out porn sites, if they word it like that, they don't know what they're talking about. The truth is there are so many and they change so much and so often, no blocker, no filter can always get them 100% of the time. As a parent, you can do some things online at your home computer, like on your router. You can turn on parental controls at the Wi-Fi level with OpenDNS. But remember that the phone, your kids can turn off Wi-Fi and use their cell phone data, which you should be monitoring, and bypass your Wi-Fi controls. So if you have not just a struggling kid, but you have a very dangerous kid, someone that's doing things that harm themselves or harm others, you may want to go all the way. And you may want to completely lock down their phone. So in the worst case scenario, you can turn off the cell phone data on their phone and not allow them permission to use cell phone data unless they're in the room with you. That means that when they carry it to school, they can't pull up their Facebook, their social media, their Snapchat. They can't be distracted in the classroom. You can lock that turning off cell phone data with parental controls. And when they are at home, you can tell them just use Wi-Fi, and on your Wi-Fi router you can use parental controls. And again, a good free one to look into is OpenDNS, and there's detailed instructions on how to set that up. But I've covered the good kid, the struggling kid. One thing I want to say real quick about the struggling kids and the dangerous kids, all of this software that claims to spy and give you a copy of everything they do, all of that software is either bogus or, in my opinion, negligent and misrepresenting what they're doing. No software out there, none, actually does a perfect record of everything a kid does on the phone. Some of the most popular ones, what they're really doing is they're taking a backup image of the phone that the phone is saved automatically and allowing you to kind of pause through the backup image and see what's stored in the backup. But backups don't happen instantly or continuously. So, and they don't happen with every app. So if they're doing something on Snapchat or Instagram, that's probably not going to be paused through in the backup. If they're texting someone, then it might be in the backup, but if they delete it real fast, it won't be. So don't spend money on these programs that claim to spy on your kids. There's a sheriff here in Limestone County. His name is Sheriff Blakely. He gives away a computer program called Computer Cop. That Computer Cop software is a dangerous program to install. Do not use it. It's an insecure keylogger. And most kids are on phones today, so it's not as big an issue as it used to be. But he does it to be tough on crime and use that for a political tool. But everyone that's a tech expert agrees that Computer Cop software that's given out by a lot of sheriffs nationwide it's actually less safe to have on your computer because it sends a copy of what your kids type to the parents in what we call plain text, unprotected. No one there to look at it and protect it from hackers. So it makes your computer less safe for you and less safe for your kids. That's not safe. Computer Cop is insecure, bogus software. If you have it, parents, get rid of it. It's not a good thing.
So, basically what I'm hearing then is if you want to keep your kids online, not to go all Ronald Reagan on you, but you have to trust but verify and maintain an open relationship with them and make certain that you take responsibility instead of trying to automate their security to like the program you're talking about. Check out their online friends, check out where they're visiting, and just don't assume, because I'm going to tell you something, Tolly, and I'm telling you this as a dad, that my kids, when they were growing up, I had no problems with any of them. And then they become teenagers, and things change, and peer pressure occurs, and they start experimenting, and they start doing other things that they might not have done previously, with their friends, whether that's, drinking their first beer or trying out a cigarette. Kids, by their very nature, are curious and experimental, and they will become victims of peer pressure. And they may very well step back from that abyss at times, but other times they certainly will not. And I think in this day and time, it's very important for parents to understand that, there's always been this long-standing joke, so to speak, about the pastor's daughter, if you know what I'm talking about. And so I think a lot of times you get a little too involved with the belief or the trust that your kid can do no wrong, that your kid can do no harm, that your kid can, not bully or not engage in this kind of risky behavior or whatever the case may be because they're your kid. But moms and dads need to understand, particularly those moms and dads today that are raising their children in this cyber world that we're in, that the kids are exposed to things 150,000 times more frequently than we ever were, and incredibly much more dangerous, and you simply cannot take it for granted that your kid is going to do the right thing, because all too frequently experimental, curious teenagers just plain don't.
That's true, and again, trust but verify is a good way to put it, and don't break the trust either, because of all this stuff, I've got a 17-year-old cousin who I'll brag on real quick. She's a college she started school this year in college at 17 years old, but she's basically entering as a sophomore. She was homeschooled. Her parents are incredible parents, super bright, super sharp kid. The parents were responsible, but they certainly didn't, demonstrate to her they didn't trust her because she had earned their trust. And so, the idea of trust but verify, obviously, and this is where I kind of step back as not a parent. I'm more of a tech geek, but I think the principle is very simple. Know your kid. Know what they're doing in person. Know who they are. And the way they are in person very much can be who they are online. And if you think they might be doing some things a little bit on the trying to hide it from you online or in person, you better believe they're doing it online. Because it's much easier to hide your behaviors online than in person. I just got two quick points I want to make sure I get out and don't forget. That this one is what was just saying. Have an open mic policy. Any question is okay to ask. Establish that norm. Make it normal for parents and kids to interact about what's happening online, not just in person. At the dinner table, hey, so what's on Instagram that's cool right now? Who's posting? Oh, and what's this post I see of this kid posting their bikini picture? Just make it an open mic policy all the time. And this is the one that is the most scary thing for parents, and it should be. If you don't, kids explore, and they naturally are curious about sexuality, especially in the times of puberty and all that. So even the good kids you have to worry about sometimes. Remember that the smartphone, can be a live camera directly into their bedroom. If you have any doubt whatsoever that your kid might be up to something, I call it if in doubt, keep it out. Just don't let them go to bed with the phone. They can wake up in the morning and grab it and check their social. If you want to do it as a not a direct affront to them, not to challenge them or to break their trust, just tell them that you're keeping them off social media so they get some sleep. Tell them that you're making sure they get enough sleep to go to school and not be distracted. You don't want them waking up and checking their Instagrams first thing. Don't tell them it's that you're worried they're broadcasting themselves half naked to some stranger on the internet. But your phone, your smartphone, can be a live camera in your child's bedroom. I'm going to repeat that.
Right.
Your smartphones could be a live video feed of your child in their bedroom. Smartphone is a great tool, but it's a powerful tool. If in doubt, keep it out.
Well said. Tyler, we're going to wrap things up here in just a bit. It's an amazing amount of information, and you really, really, really give us a lot to think about. Before we get the program concluded here, let's go ahead, and I believe Dave is calling in. Dave Richardson's calling in, wants to chime in on this particular issue as well, as it is so unbelievably important. Good morning, Dave. How are you?
Good morning, guys. I got two questions. Well, one comment and a question. One comment is when I had my kids, I did not let them have computers in their bedroom. They were out in the common area and they didn't really know it, but I set the computer up where I could see the reflection in the dining room glass so that they felt like they were secure or they felt like they were alone over there, but I could see the reflection, and I'd go, "What side are you on right there?" And they'd go, "Hey, you know." Well, they didn't know I could see the reflection in the dining room glass, so I could keep it. And then, like Tolly was saying, my kids never carried their phones into their bedroom. They had to out in the living room where we were all at.
So Big Dave Richardson would be like a spy master spying on his kids, just checking out the reflection there. I applaud you, Big Dave. That's true. And I would have mentioned keeping the computer out of the bedroom. The reason I didn't is not just – you're absolutely right. The reason I didn't is because the truth is I think every kid's got a smartphone. So unless you address the smartphone, that computer doesn't matter. And so you're again to keep not just the computer but the phone out as well.
Well, they couldn't use their phone unless – it was during the day where we're all awake. They could take it into their bedroom. But a lot of times, if they were in their bedroom, they couldn't have the door closed. So, number two, is there any way, Tolly, that you can mirror their phone to your phone?
There are some ways, Dave, where you can go on there and check out what they're doing. If you have an iPhone, for instance, you could require them to use your iMessage account, which means that at least the iMessages will be copied to your phone. The truth is, though, I don't think a lot of the sketchy stuff happens on iMessage. I think it happens on social media apps, and there's always a way to get around that. The reality, the honest answer to your question is no. Any software that claims it can give you a full snapshot or a current view of the kid's phone is over-promising and under-delivering or outright misleading. And some of them, like that Computer Cop software that's handed out by, Sheriff Blakely in Limestone County, some of those software programs are actually more dangerous to have for you and for your kids than they do good. So,
let me ask you this. One of the things that I had, and back when my kids were young, we didn't have all the stuff that they have now. But one of the things that I made them do is if they were going to add an app to their phone or whatever, I had to have the password to every one of them.
Absolutely. And I'm glad you mentioned that because that does bring me back to I meant to mention, Michael, I don't want to wrap up without mentioning this. I have a Keeping Kids Safe Online, a free PDF available on my website, Liberty One Tech. That's LIBERTY, the number one, TECH.com, LibertyOneTech.com. It's called Keeping Kids Safe Online, free publication there, free PDF. And one of the things on there that I didn't cover is what you just said, Dave. You do want to have access to their social media accounts. You can be their friend online, but remember that when they post, they can choose what friends can see, which things they post. And so you do want to have all their passwords. The question, really, this is a parental question. I would defer to you and Michael for this. But the question is, do you trust them to give you access to everything? Have they created a separate account you don't know of? That's where it gets tricky. You have to be a good enough parent. That's where I don't like to use the word spy, and I don't like breaching trust. But I do feel like a certain degree of random check to the phone. I mentioned, in the middle of the night, picking up and checking it, if they notice find out those hidden accounts at night, that may not be so good, just randomly, hey, bring me your phone. I want to check something on your phone real quick. See if it's the same thing on yours as it is on mine. And just check real quick, just browse in there.
Tolly, you're saying don't be a spy and everything, but I think that's a problem with a lot of the parenting now. Parents want to be their kids' friends. We don't need to be their friends. We need to be their parent. So, yes, spy on your kid. Keep them, you might keep them from getting in trouble or being harmed.
Oh, absolutely. And, again, that's where I defer to the more experienced parents that know their kids. I think some kids probably would rebel against the spying and make the situation worse. I know that when I was raised, my parents trusted me. They instilled that trust in me, and they didn't set a lot of hard and firm rules. They set boundaries and expectations, and they didn't spy on me. And it still goes back, Tolly, to trust but verify. It just can't be anything. It can't be anything else, because kids today, we have to understand that from a parental perspective, they are going to capitulate to peer pressure. And it's not just a matter of naivete of not posting the sexy bikini picture or whatever the case may be. If they find out, they could be the greatest kid in the world, and if they find out that all their friends are hanging out over here on a Friday night on the Kick app, they're going to visit it at least once. Their curiosity, because they don't want to go to school Monday morning and have missed the party. How many know when we were growing up, particularly Dave and I, if you were invited to the party, you were, pretty much ostracized, out of the cool kids come Monday morning. That party is now online, and that party can be, first off, it's clandestine. It can be more sexual in its nature. Unless it's been privatized, anybody can show up. And I think a lot of parents need to be aware that your good little boy and girl, they want to be part of the cool kid, because the cool kid clique has always been in, no matter what generation we're dealing with in this country, and they will do whatever they can to be accepted, particularly online. That's why we have these influencers that are out there, and that's why we have the heightened bullying as well. Kids can be absolutely brutal to one another. And so we need to realize... Go ahead.
I'll say this, that when my kids were growing up, they would tell you they loved me, but they didn't like me, because I made sure that I went through their phones every other week. I was not going to have them having stuff on their phone, because they live in my house just like in their bedroom. I remember my son telling me, you can't go in there and look at my private stuff. I took his daggum door off the wall.
Right.
Well,
Dave,
you live in my house.
It goes back to the olden days that this country, and probably the world, has probably got hundreds of thousands, if not millions of moms that knew that their little boy was a shining star. He's a great athlete. He gets great grades. And then they are appalled when they find the Playboy under the mattress.
Oh, my mom did, and she tore it up right in front of me.
Yep. Guys, we got to wrap this up. Very good stuff.
Y'all have a good day. It's good talking to y'all.
You too, Dave. Thanks so much for the call.
I appreciate Dave's comments, and I agree that spying is necessary to a degree, and it depends on your child and your parenting techniques and tactics to how much of a degree that is. Please don't misunderstand that I'm saying that, no, let your kids have their no, don't. Be a good parent, be a responsible parent, be actively involved. I know all the truism that for every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. So don't try not to breach your kids' trust, because, and this is why I say be careful about that. If you teach them that you don't trust them and you force them underground, believe me, they're going to win the technology battle. They're going to be able to keep things from you. If you spy, your spying is not going to be a complete picture. It might help you understand, but in a battle of technology wits and who knows better about keeping things private and secret, you better believe the teens are going to find ways around the parents. Right. So it's important to establish trust and an open mic policy and an open relationship where you can talk honestly and let them come to you with it rather than you having to go to them. But, yes, you should always trust but verify, or even don't trust and verify. You don't want to get in a situation where they're hiding it from you, because if they're actively trying to hide it from you, everything from you, they're going to win. And you don't want that type of situation to unfold either.
I want to kind of just build off that very quickly as we wrap this thing up, Tolly, is a lot of new listeners to the program. We take a lot of the old 101 audience with us, but there's a lot of new listeners to the program here on the Michael Hart Show and the Situational Security broadcast that, people need to understand that a lot of the folks that listen to me on the terrestrial signal have had problems converting over since we have moved the program off of that limited signal to the Internet. They've had problems listening to the program or following the program because of the technology. Because, maybe they don't have a Facebook or they don't have Twitter or they can't figure out how to use the links or download a player or whatever the case may be. And we're working our way through that to assist these people. But I think it's very important for folks to realize that, if you're struggling with the technology, going back to Tolly's comment, your kids and your grandkids, they're not. They are extremely up to speed with some of this stuff. And I do find it a little bit concerning that we have this portion of the audience that has such limited knowledge about the Internet that so much of what you have shared with us today can sound so far-flung and far-fetched when in reality it's every single day with almost every single kid. It is very important that moms and dads learn about technology to the degree that they can so that they can help police and counsel their children and their young adults to understanding the threats. If mom and dad can't log on because they don't have a Facebook account, how in the world are they going to understand the threat that their kids deal with every single day, and frankly, a threat that even a child may not understand? Tolly, real quick, if people want more information about the PDF, tell us where we can find it.
That's what I was about to say, Michael. So to that degree, to where if they need help, I do run a technology consulting and service business. I mostly focus on business consulting and web design, but I do basically almost anything in the services and consulting area as well. So there's a free PDF on libertyoneTech.com, LIBERTY, the number 1, TECH.com. And it's called Keeping Kids Safe Online. They can download that for a number of things we talked about today and just where to watch for online hangouts and stuff. But if they want to develop if their child is someone that they feel like, man, I don't have the technology tools to track them, and I'm worried about the path they're on. I'm worried about the things they're doing online, and I know that if I don't do something right now, I could lose them. I could lose them to a life that is forever altered by the mistakes they make right now. If you do that, Liberty One Tech does do consultations with parents on computers and devices, and I can help you set up all the different things we talked about and kind of do a personalized approach, a comprehensive, personal, custom approach for your exact needs and situations. I'll give you a quick story, real quick story. I had a client call me. Their mentally handicapped son, who is an adult, but they were like a child in mind, was talking to people online and doing things online that could land him in jail. They called me online. They called me over to make sure that I prevented him from being able to do the things online that could land him in jail. I helped the parent, because this is a mentally a very young child but an adult body. And I helped them lock down all the devices he had access to, track his location, prevent him from going to places he couldn't go, and basically set up a very comprehensive approach for making sure that he couldn't get himself put in jail for what he was doing. Right. They were very thankful for it, and I was happy to help them. So if that's you, libertyoneTech.com, I can help. Hopefully I haven't scared anyone today. My goal is not to scare anyone. My goal is to inform.
I hope you did scare folks,
be a scary place.
I hope you did
scare folks. Well, it can be
folks.
Scary, but it also can be beautiful.
Because it is.
Great.
Well, again, it doesn't matter if we're talking about, an active shooter situation like we did earlier today with Jason Miller of Safety Book, or we're talking about online security. We have to, as Jason pointed out, we have to be our own first responder. We have to police our homes. We have to be the spiritual leaders of our homes. It is our responsibility. It is incumbent on us to keep our children safe wherever we can. And, Tolly, I appreciate you popping by. You knocked it out of the park. I knew you would. I appreciate you so very much. And we're going to get on out of here today. Remind everybody that on the Monday's broadcast, it's going to be, and then there's that, where we'll wrap up the news of the week and also the weekend and give you some thoughts on that as we also prepare for the Wednesday edition of Unknown America right here on the Heart of America Talk Radio Network. Tolly, thank you so much. I hope everybody has a safe weekend. Go check out Tolly's the free PDF he's put together for you at Liberty One Tech. It's the number one, libertyoneTech.com. That is correct, right, Tolly?
It is, Michael, and thank you very much. It's been a pleasure to be on the show as a guest and not just a political nerd caller that makes fun. And Ron Paul all the time, great.
Yeah.
You're absolutely right. Spiritual parenting, preaching the Bible to your kids. I didn't mention that because it's not exactly tech security and cybersecurity, but that's the number one thing. Appreciate you, Michael.
Absolutely. Thank you, Tolly. I appreciate it very much. That's it for us. You guys, make sure you check out heartofamerica.net and a copy of Unknown America, theunknownamerica.com. It is currently still discounted and will be through the month of December. We're going to be back with you Monday morning at 8. You've been listening to the Michael Hart's Situational Security Program here at heartofamerica.com.